He kōna ipurangi tēnei nā te reo irirangi o Aotearoa.
This is Mediawatch. I'm Colin Peacock at RNZ in Wellington, and with me today for this one, Hayden Donnell is at RNZ in the Big Smoke, Auckland. Hi, Hayden.
Kia ora, Colin.
Now, I can't see you down the line, no cameras for this, but can I assume you're wearing an effervescent tangerine suit as usual?
Colin, you know what? I'm not actually wearing an effervescent tangerine suit. I'm wearing plain plaid as per usual, and I think you know that. But are you referring to, with that effervescent tangerine suit line, a post from the New Zealand Society in London, which mentioned our Finance Minister, Nicola Willis, wearing a tangerine suit for a talk that she gave over there?
I am indeed. You're very well informed. Yeah, that was the New Zealand Society, currently kind of run and administered by former gossip columnist and media entrepreneur Rachel Glusina. So when you're a gossip columnist, you would kind of make reference to what people are wearing, even if they were important politicians and what they wore wasn't all that important. But the reason the media seized on this story was that the New Zealand Society's post on Facebook said there were gentle whispers that she might be the next Prime Minister. So did you sense that this was an uptick in the boiling story the media is kind of waiting for, that there might be moves against the Prime Minister and National Party leader?
It doesn't take much when someone's under pressure. You just have to have a vague pretense to hang stories off, and then you can start reading the tea leaves. You can say, Nicola Willis stood in Chris Luxon's spot on the tiles, or there's something going on, and it's basically laying entrails around Parliament's forecourt, and then reading them, and that becomes the basis for stories. These things take on a momentum of their own, and they're often based on almost nothing.
But in this case, I don't think it did gather momentum. It didn't pass the threshold. We had the Lloyd Burr story for Stuff about, Nicola Willis, a couple of days later taking allegedly the Prime Minister's spot on the tiles to meet the media. Also a Herald story about that. And yet after that, it didn't seem to open the floodgates.
You had Kieran McAnulty yelling about it in the House, the gentle whispers. The main takeaway that I have from this, yes, the media tries to get things snowballing a little bit when there's not much going on, but maybe they can generate a story to put the Prime Minister under pressure. That's a real phenomenon. The other thing is, I haven't read Rachel Glusina's writing in a wee while. She hasn't been in the New Zealand media. It's a real blast from the past reading this Facebook post. It's an itch that I haven't scratched for some time. Tangerine suits, sultry, gravelly voices all mentioned. It's traditional Kiwi sausage rolls, Saleer lamb fillets, a great description of the food on offer over there. It's real Rachel Glusina fare that I haven't tasted in a while. Awatiri River, Marlborough Sauvignon Blanc. We've got a real description of all the food that was quaffed over there. Thank you, Rachel Glusina. I've missed you.
There may be more of that. But look, when we talk about people, their jobs being under threat, is this a bit personal for you? Because you're coming to the end of your Mediawatch stint, aren't you? Are you feeling emotional about this or overwhelmed by regret, possibly?
Yeah, I think it's bittersweet, Colin. So on the sad side, I'll no longer be able to alienate and annoy my peers on a weekly basis. But on the plus side, I won't have to talk to you so much.
Okay. There are other ways of alienating and annoying other people, though. It doesn't have to be by
I
this
will
program.
still be alienating and annoying people in my new role at the spin-off.
Mm-hmm. And with the news of RNZ's new audio plan and the Sutherland report urging great change, I've had a lot of email, or we have, to the Mediawatch mailbox. They really hate banter between presenters talking to each other in RNZ shows rather than getting down to business. What do you think, mate, about the chit-chat between presenters?
Yeah, well, I would say that have you heard about the rugby? And what about the price of butter? Text us in your feedback.
I did get an email yesterday from a journalist that I thought was a joke. She was saying, like, yesterday Lisa Owen was talking about her toenails at great length, and I thought it was a joke. Then I was actually listening back to a part of Checkpoint for another purpose, and there was actually a fairly lengthy discussion of her toenails.
And I had left quite a ragged edge on my toenail, which stabbed into my toe, thus causing my foot to bleed, of which I did not notice. And so then I just spread blood all over the carpet. Cut your toenails. Yeah, exactly.
Prepare before you repair.
Yes, that's a good one.
Well, it's about relatability to the listener. And if you don't feel related to as a listener, then you can just bugger off, all right?
Fair enough. Later in this edition of Mediawatch, Hayden is going to look at whether the media might be able at last to claw back some of the cash from those who currently crawl the web and harvest their content online, extract the value from it and give pretty much nothing back. But if so, how can that be done? Turns out it's pretty complicated, but we've got help from someone else at RNZ who, to be frank, understands the tech of this a little better than we do. But we're going to begin this week with a look at a business that's actually pretty important in the media and especially in publishing, though readers probably don't give them a second look when they see them, and that's stock images. So if you want to illustrate an article or an advert with a high quality image that will engage the eyeballs of the audience, you've got a couple of choices. You can make your own or get someone in-house to do it, in which case you own the image, but you can also buy a high-quality, ready-made one from a stock image library, and you also buy the rights to publish that with your own work, a license effectively. So what could possibly go wrong?
Still hurt, still angry. Bloody traumatising.
That's the voice of Ellen Tamati in a recent report from Ōkaha News, and that's a small organisation covering Tainui, Te Arawa and Tauranga Moana. And Ellen's story, it ended up in the national news, but it was Ōkaha News that first reported just how upset Ellen and her whanau were about her face and the words, "My mana doesn't need a mandate," ending up on a billboard, because that was part of an ad campaign opposing Māori wards for local councils, a campaign run by the One Law for All pressure group Hobson's Pledge. And Ellen and her makapuna told Ōkaha News in no uncertain terms that she strongly opposed that campaign.
My nan shouldn't have to feel like this. She was already brought up in that generation that got real beaten out of them. And now she's having to go through this when all she does is fight for Māori. And they're using her image against her to promote an opposite view. I'm angry.
So that upset clearly very, very real. Hayden, you looked into this for Midweek Mediawatch last week. Can you remind us just how it was that Ellen's face ended up on those billboards?
Basically, Tamati was photographed at Waitangi. She attended Waitangi this year, and the photographer that took that image licensed that shot to two stock photo agencies. One was iStock, another was Shutterstock, and they sell images and the right to publish them to paying customers. The thing with this image, though, is that it was marked editorial use only. That means it's not for commercial or promotional purposes. And that would seem to conflict with what Hobson's Pledge used it for, which was an ad for its anti-Māori ward campaign. And the Advertising Standards Authority says it is evaluating more than 140 complaints over the ad, but it hasn't issued a decision yet. And after that interview with Ellen Tamati came out, Hobson's Pledge did retract its stance a little bit.
Hobson's Pledge leader Don Brash says he is saddened to see that the billboard has upset Ellen's family.
Well, we bought the photograph from a regular photography supplier, and we assumed, therefore, that we had the rights to use it. We understand that the woman concerned is upset about that fact, and we're doing our best to contact her, and of course we'll apologise for her hurt.
Now, you had Māori photographer Erica Sinclair, though, telling Ōkaha News the photographer who captured the image of Ellen Tamati did not seek her consent, and she wasn't impressed by that.
Something like that would 9 times out of 10 not happen with True Stock and the content license agreements that they have in the first place. All of the clients that I photograph have their own release forms.
Yeah.
And so in those cases, I'd get the talent or the model to fill out that organisation's release form. Or, there's usually a representative that comes with me to the photo shoot who will handle all of that stuff, so I don't need to bother with it. And we agree not to misuse their image.
Māori photographer Erica Sinclair there talking to Ōkaha News. Now, the agency that she mentioned there is True Stock, which says on its website it curates New Zealand stock photos showcasing all aspects of local life. And its CEO and co-founder Tanmay Desai is with us now. Thanks for coming in, Tanmay.
Thanks for having me, Colin.
Can you walk us through the basics of the stock image business and where something like yourselves as a New Zealand company with a distinctive mission fits in alongside the likes of the global giants like Getty or Shutterstock?
Yep, sure. So with stock image libraries worldwide, the general model is that you have a group of contributors, contributing photographers and videographers, who will create a whole lot of content, sometimes based on the information that the stock library has provided them. They will then upload that content onto the stock library, and then when the images or the videos sell, they get a commission to them. So when we started this, the number one pain point was that the photographers felt that they were getting the shorter end of the stick with increasingly sort of lower commissions and surprise pricing changes. The other flip side was that traditionally these stock libraries have been started in America or overseas, so they have a whole lot of American staged-looking photos. So we wanted to tackle that. So that was the idea, and that's why we started it. But that's the general idea of a stock library. Pool of contributors contributing assets, and they get paid when these assets get sold.
And your point of difference is that you pay the photographers more and you actually pay the talent?
That's correct. So we offer the highest commission in the world to our photographers, which is 50%. Some of the international libraries are roughly between 15 to 30%, because we want everyone involved to get paid fairly.
And Tame, there was a controversy a few years back, I remember, when the previous government made changes to the Working for Families policy, put out a document for public consumption about it. The front page image was a family in a nice, warm, dry, brightly lit home enjoying family life together. When it was interrogated by the media, they found it was a family in Brisbane. But in this case of the Hobson's Pledge billboard, so it turns out that image of Ellen Tamati had T's and C's attached that said editorial use only. So is there always a risk that if you attend an event in public, like Ellen Tamati did at Waitangi, and you agree to be photographed, that you might end up in a context that might not align with what you think?
There's two things there. Number one, again, with the editorial license, what that means is that if you're out and about as a photographer, you can capture people. You are allowed to sell it as an editorial image, much like you would if you're in a war zone or political rally, for example. What you can't do is sell that image for commercial or a creative use, which would be the advertising world or marketing collateral or so on. From an editorial point of view, yes, you can technically see your face in a news story, but if you've attended a public event and you see your face in an ad, it's a very different story.
Well, that's exactly what happened to Ellen Tamati in this case. So where were the checks and balances in place? What went wrong?
Mm-hmm. From the outside, what seems to have happened is that an international photographer seems to have captured Ellen at a public event and then gone on to upload it onto an international stock library, I guess allowed it to be sold only with an editorial license, i.e. to be used for factual news stories with a credit usually. Hobson's Pledge seems to have bought that image and obviously have used it in a commercial application. Every stock library has a content license agreement you have to agree to legally. It's legally binding. If any client has bought an image on an editorial license and then they go on to use it commercially without any comms with the stock library, the onus is on the client who is purchasing the image to make sure and confirm with the library that they're not breaking any laws.
Could that happen to you, though, at TrueStock?
Firstly, we don't actually sell images on an editorial license. We only sell a creative license or a commercial license for advertising use. We interview everyone who applies, and we have several interviews before we accept a contributor who comes on board to make sure that they know they're experienced and they understand the legalities of it. So them shooting someone in public is just a no-no.
What I wondered, though, is whether there's any protections for a stock photo model that doesn't go through this editorial's different, but if they've got a commercial license on their stock photo, whether there's any protections for them from being used in this kind of political campaign or ad campaign for a product or position that they might strongly disagree with, or do they just have no legal rights once their stock image is taken?
At TrueStock especially, and look, other stock libraries as well, we've got a content license agreement that the clients have to legally abide to, right? And there are set clauses that talk about what the images can't and can be used for. Especially in these sensitive cases, what tends to happen is the clients actually get in touch with us to ask whether an image is okay to be used for a certain subject. And that's because they don't want this situation to happen. They don't want a campaign being pulled. So we actually have a clause in our content license agreement that you can't use images for political campaigns anyways.
Okay.
And look, now people who want to break the law, they can take an image of Facebook. They can take an image of the internet and use it. At least all of our images are watermarked. So they have to legally purchase something. But it's if someone wants to break the law willingly.
Or they can take an image of AI.
Or they can take an image of AI, which is a very, I guess, separate topic altogether, Yeah.
And with that in mind, while Ellen Tamati and her whanau clearly didn't want her image used in a Hobson's Pledge ad campaign, eyebrows were raised by another image that didn't feature anyone real at all, an AI image. Now, this involves the website of Wātea News, which is the news website of the Urban Māori station, long-serving station, Radio Wātea. It's currently running what it calls a deep dive series of articles into the cost of living. So part 2 of that featured an unnamed working mum of 2 school-aged kids, and it's illustrated with a picture of a woman and 2 children. They've got an empty trolley outside a supermarket. All of them have strikingly similar unhappy expressions on their faces, and it doesn't look real. And a note below on the article says, the images for this feature are AI generated to protect the mana of real life whanau. And in the first part of the series, interestingly, there's 2 of them up at the moment, a crop version of that same image is there, but it doesn't have any acknowledgement that it's AI generated. Now, I'm guessing you don't think generating an AI image of them is legit?
The intent there is good because they want to, protect someone's identity. But look, there are heaps of ways around that and still be able to authentically represent what's happening out there. There are creative ways of showing some subject matter without using faces, rather than, I guess, relying on AI, especially to create people faces.
There's something weird about that, right? That you're using an AI prompt to ask a robot to draw a stereotypical image. You could have typed in Māori family looking sad with trolley, and it just feels a bit weird.
And then beyond that, there are legalities around it as well. It's quite a bit of a grey area because those images have been created based on other images that have IP and copyright and so on.
But also there's the element of, this is a Māori media organisation that's doing this. They say to protect the mana of the people they're talking about and not feature them or stigmatise them. But, I can't imagine what the response would be if a non-Māori media organisation, a New Zealand media outlet like, for example, Stuff or an online one like Newsroom had decided to do that. But if a media organisation had come to you with that, how would you have gone about illustrating that?
It is for an editorial use. So it's not an ad or a commercial campaign. So, I would recommend that if they did want to use one of our images, it would just have to be either close-up of hands or something without people in it. That's up to someone to solve that creatively, but we would 100% not allow any images with faces be attached to that article.
But you can be creative with silhouetting and like you mentioned.
Absolutely,
yeah. Like that.
Absolutely. And all I would recommend is that there are other creative ways of solving it than using AI, especially to generate images of that nature.
And is the importance of having an authentic image broadly understood by things like government departments or agencies, councils, if they want to produce a publication in this economy where they're all being told to cut back? Do they kind of regard having an authentic image as, a nice to have, and that they'd actually be prepared to, save money, go to a cheaper stock agency and end up with the family in Brisbane on the cover of their report and just not worry about it? Is that a problem right now?
In our experience of running TrueStock for almost 4 years now here in New Zealand, the government departments and beyond, they definitely appreciate being able to represent real people in their imagery, because a lot of the times, the image is a big part of the comms, whether it'll be an annual report or an internal report or some sort of comms going out. From what we understand, they definitely want to represent the real Aotearoa rather than cut corners. But the local, councils, ministries, what we've found is they definitely appreciate this local resource.
Look, you're not just representing Aotearoa anymore, are you? You're over in Australia.
That is correct. And the lack of anything similar overseas, what we decided was to actually launch TrueStock in Australia, but as a completely separate business entity. To our knowledge, there's just international stock libraries selling generic stuff, and they have country-based filters, but there's no other stock library that is kind of operating in the same space where they have ethically produced content, but local partnerships, much like we had in New Zealand. The first step is to build a library. That's the first stage, but we've started seeing some really good sales from your government departments, from creative agencies, from private companies. It's been so good to see some of our photographers that might be in Katikati or some smaller town in South Island. Their images, have been purchased by some of the biggest agencies. Getting these guys out of the woodwork has been a true pleasure.
I wonder, are you worried about the impact of AI, Tanmay, on the business of TrueStock? Because media outlets might care about authentic images, but if they're under pressure to save money, cut corners, so if they're doing that because they can and it's cheap, that's going to cut into your business, isn't it?
Look, there are threats, from AI. Definitely, we can't ignore it. From where I see it, it's going to be extremely hard to replicate in AI. Because of all the nuances, all the local, telltale signs. It's just we're not there yet. And I think increasingly it'll become more of a point of difference. We just don't allow AI on our library, and that a lot of international libraries do.
Thanks so much for joining us there, Tanmay Desai. He's the Chief Executive and the co-founder of the local cooperative stock agency, TrueStock. Now, while some media companies are turning to AI to save a bit of money and time, as we heard there, they're also worried about losing money to AI outfits who target their online content for data to make their own AI innovations better. But in the end, it might just prove to be a way that media companies can, at last, make back some money from their own content online. Last month, News Talk ZB's Heather Duplessis-Allen told her listeners this.
What I'd been talking about was AI and the crawlers, right? Because AI is ripping the nighty of Google, and now they're putting up these little toll booths to get the AI crawlers to pay for being on the websites. It's the only way really to monetize the thing. There is a little bit of a move that is ongoing here, and we've got Cloudflare, who's going to be with us in about an hour's time to explain exactly how.
Well, the outfit that Heather Duplessis-Allen mentioned there, Cloudflare, is a content delivery network from California, which controls access to about a fifth of the global internet. And the reason that ZB's Drive host reckoned that it was interfering with the structural integrity of Google's nightware is the idea of charging any AI bots harvesting the data of their clients. And Cloudflare's Chief Strategy Officer, Stephanie Cohen, told News Talk ZB this.
I think there's a real optimistic view of the future where this is where original high quality content thrives because, to your point, AI crawlers want access. We do think that there is a real opportunity here for us to create an ecosystem where there's demand for high quality original content, which we think is good for AI, but also good for human beings.
Well, good for human beings. Who could be against that? Certainly not the media, desperate for any online revenue they can make at this point. But how would that actually work for our media companies? Well, here's Hayden to explain that and why it matters so much to the media right now.
At the dawn of the internet, mainstream commercial media faced two choices: protect the copyright on its content and put up paywalls, or get with the program and put its journalism on the World Wide Web for free. Egged on by a coterie of tech commentators who projected big audience growth and new rivers of digital ad money, most picked path 2. We all know what happened next. The audiences came along, but the accompanying ad money, for the most part, did not. Instead, that cash was hoovered up by social media companies like Facebook and Google, which thrived partly thanks to the free content being served to them by the legacy media. In recent years, there's been some readjustment. News organisations like Stuff, once leery of paywalls, have learned to embrace them. They've reshaped their pitches around quality and trust and tried to shore up their eroding ad revenue with memberships and premium subscriptions. But just as some organisations are finally finding a new footing, another sea change is on the horizon.
Ladies and gentlemen, AI is taking over. There's a team of robots kept alive in some giant warehouse with tons of electricity right now, whirring away, beavering away on the world's big problems.
That's Ryan Bridge on News Talk ZB this week. Along with beavering away on the world's big problems, though, AI is also using web crawlers to train its models on coverage churned out by journalists. It uses that content to, among other things, create the AI overviews that now appear at the top of the page when you search for something on Google. That creates a dilemma for creators, which the marketer Ryan Dosa sums up like this.
Let me paint the picture for you. You spend hours crafting blog content. You optimize every headline, build backlinks, maybe even hire a content team to scale your organic traffic. But then you Google your target keyword, and what do you see? Your article isn't getting the clicks. It's not even the first thing people see. Instead, there's a giant AI-generated box at the top of the page pulling info straight from your content and sending zero traffic back your way. Google is stealing your content and traffic.
Dosa goes on to claim that website clicks from search referrals have dropped 34.5% since AI overviews have come along. And all this happening while other efforts to make tech companies pay for news, like the Fair Digital News Bargaining Bill, flounder. No wonder some media figures have had an absolute gutsful.
They control access to the internet, access to your audience. They harness your customer data and build products off it. They control the advertising technology and are able to set pricing and the sort of digital advertising world there. And no matter what our businesses do to try and meet the needs of their audiences and things, they are essentially like running up a hill all the time, trying to catch up to the platforms are harnessing all the value.
That was Stuff owner Sinead Boucher talking to Parliament about big tech last year. But she and other like-minded media figures have recently found a powerful ally. The massive internet infrastructure provider Cloudflare has announced it will block AI crawlers accessing content without permission or compensation by default. There's hope that Cloudflare's move might offer a path forward for the media to stay viable in the AI age. RNZ's Corey Fuima'ono has been looking into this to explain whether this is a step towards media companies finally reaping the rewards they were promised more than 25 years ago and actually making some money off the internet. Kia ora, Corey. Welcome to Mediawatch.
Kia ora, Hayden.
Can you tell me, from the media's perspective, what is the problem with AI crawling their content without permission?
AI crawlers, and these are very different from the crawlers that Google, for example, would use as a search engine, right? They would crawl throughout your website, they would scrape a bit of data, and whenever somebody would type in a search term, bam, your website pops up, maybe as a top search result. AI crawlers, on the other hand, they do not attribute any information that comes from your organization whenever you go into ChatGPT and type in a question. If that query seeks information that might come from an article, for example, you will get that response from ChatGPT, all of your article just gets resynthesized, re-summarized in a sense, and no attribution to you at all. So lost revenue from ad clicks that you could have gotten, no, gone. Cloudflare at the start of July came out to the world and said, all of the websites that are powered through our network, which they boast is around 20% of the global internet, we are going to block all AI traffic, like AI crawlers and fetchers, by default. However, maybe if you were a Stuff or a New Zealand Herald and you thought, well, maybe I do want to allow some of these AI crawlers to scrape data from my website, but I'm going to charge them a fee every time they do so. They are allowing that to take place.
Well, they probably are reluctant to commit to a pay-for-play system, right? They've got away without that in the past.
Exactly. They were getting data for free, and now they have to pay for it. Given that these companies are now charging their own customers, I wonder if they're like, okay, we've come to a stage in our business where we are mature enough to maybe pay for some of the content that we've been scraping in the past.
Cloudflare, as you say, it says it represents about 20% of the internet, and that's a big amount to cut off from these AI companies, but it's not all of it. It's not even a majority. Can they just do without?
Well, when it comes to Cloudflare, they're one of the big three content delivery networks, or CDNs. You've got Cloudflare, you've got Fastly, another CDN, and Akamai. They are essentially allowing all of the websites that funnel through their networks tools to be able to block AI agents and AI crawlers. And so, I mean, they're just going to have to play ball to some degree. I spoke to Kelly Shortridge, who's the Vice President for Security at Fastly, about this.
It's a tricky discussion because on the one hand, you do have these, larger and let's call them more like business friendly, maybe, they want to carve agreement or negotiate agreements with media companies or e-commerce companies, right? They're looking to operate kind of a above board business. And so they're often, and I think more willing than even 6 months ago, to consider solutions where they're able to attest or otherwise verify, like, yes, this is me, I'm legitimate, and not really obfuscate who they are, try to, surreptitiously scrape content. With that said, I know we have certainly seen quite a few instances of other kind of AI companies or even other organizations, maybe even individuals, who are trying to impersonate those bigger, more legitimate companies. So yes, you either have to move to paywall everyone, which isn't in everyone's best interest, especially outside of the media space, or you have to figure out a way to better manage and control bots to make sure, you are consenting to interactions with AI bots, whether those are crawlers or fetchers. I personally think it's a really evolving issue. And I think the more options that, again, media, commerce, other companies have at their disposal, the better.
Are we essentially getting a repeat of the early internet where we faced this choice before as the media, and we opted to let these big tech companies take our content for free with the hope that it would expand our audience and bring us to new horizons? Are we just making sure now that they have to pay? There's no way that we're going to trust these companies again.
Well, there are two things. One is that this is very early. We don't even know what the fair price of scraping data is for AI companies to face. But second, this is not going to solve the problems that you've had with revenue over the last few years. It's a little piece of the puzzle. It is going to be very interesting within the next few months, I think, to see what that fair price is.
And whether they'll pay it. Because isn't there a world where they just don't pay the fee, they decide that they're going to get their information off websites which are probably quite happy to provide it, and what results from this is not that people get more money, but the quality of AI information degrades even further?
There's a lot at stake, and I think these AI companies will come to the table. I did speak to Kelly about that as well.
So you have, again, a spectrum of companies, the willingness to play, and you also have to think about also what's fair from a market perspective, because at the same time, it'd be easy to say like, oh, well, just letting the big incumbents and, they can get a beautiful rubber stamp. And it's like, well, what if they're startup entrants? We want to make sure that there's healthy market competition. So you don't want something that's so technically heavy that it precludes, competition. Otherwise, you're kind of guaranteeing market concentration. So that's the interesting thing, is it's because there's so many different variables involved here. And so you have to be really careful both on the technical side, social side, business side, with how you approach this. So I think it's all to say, like, it's a little bit of a mess. I think, again, a year from now, how is it going to look? I don't know. But I think there will be progress one way or another in at least some dimension, because there is enough interest where, let's say everybody just decides to block all AI bots. There are some companies that are big enough that will meaningfully hurt their business, and they don't want that. And so that is why, again, you're increasingly seeing them start to actually invest in finding alternate solutions to help various industries. Again, it's mostly media and commerce for now, attest what is a legitimate or wanted bot or not. So again, that's even within the past 6 months. So it's so rapidly evolving. Where they make most of their money off of their content. Yes, they certainly feel that, what is fair is to be able to monetize that content and ideally have explicit agreements in place ahead of time.
Having almost a paywall for AI crawlers is one way of generating revenue. There have been media outlets out there who have openly signed contracts with the likes of OpenAI or a Google Gemini. At this point, I wonder if it's just more efficient for news media individually or collectively even to go to these AI companies and say, hey, we know what you're doing. All we want to do is get paid.
Is this a story that people are talking enough about?
Nope.
It's quite a defining issue for the media, right?
I wonder why sometimes nobody is talking about this, because it is the frontier now. It's the future of media that we are talking about in terms of its sustainability. I think if they don't hop on board with AI companies, there's a huge risk that their readership, their listenership, their viewership continues to dwindle as people just go to ChatGPT to ask queries, as people would go onto, people would go onto Google to do a little bit of searching.
Are we going to avoid the mistakes of the past? Are we actually going to get with the program this tech revolution around and potentially make some money at last off the internet?
I bloody hope so.
Hayden there talking to Kore Fuamaono, RNZ studio operator and the co-host of the occasional 8 till Late show, about how content distribution network companies that run access to the internet might be able at last to make some much needed money for our media by charging the AI operators that scrape their content with crawlers all over the web. And in that interview, you also heard Corey talking there to Kelly Shortridge. She is the security vice president at the CDN called Fastly, which is one that is widely used by New Zealand companies operating online. And Corey's full interview with Kelly, for those interested in the issue, that's on the 8 till Late webpage at rnz.co.nz. You'll find it if you look for the title Extra Tech Verse, a tariff for AI crawlers ? So Hayden, a question for you. Are we going to make money? Corey says, bloody hope so. Look, to paraphrase our Prime Minister, hope is not a strategy. But is it when we're dealing with the absolute monsters of AI?
Let's face it, Colin, hope is just about all we have in this business at times. We certainly don't have leverage or meaningful legislative backing helping us to make money off the internet. So I think hope is a fair assessment of where our strategy is at, but it's not fair to say it's just hope that media companies are engaging in. They're also signing up to schemes like Cloudflare's to make sure their copyright is protected. They're lobbying governments to protect their copyright. And they're trying to at least make big tech pay by banding together and negotiating with them, asking governments to bring big tech to the negotiating table. So it's not just hope, but it's just the power imbalance is so vast. These are basically nation states, these companies, and then you're dealing with the likes of Stuff or the Herald. No offence, they're great big companies in New Zealand, but they have nothing like the kind of power that a Facebook or a Meta has, or even Elon Musk. And the issue that we have is that governments have been pretty unwilling to act. They're probably fearing tariff retaliation from the US. They'd rather not incur tariffs from Donald Trump just to protect the New Zealand Herald or Stuff back home, and they probably just find the prospect of going up against the Facebooks of the world or the AI companies of the world, the Sam Altmans, pretty daunting.
As part of the problem also, like, they understand the tech, these companies, these innovators, far better than any regulator or the end users, because I was reading the Cloudflare that you mentioned there, who were the first to do this, try and construct toll booths. That means the AI crawlers will have to pay for access. They say they're dealing with what they call stealth crawlers that are going around them. So no sooner have they put up the digital toll booth than other companies are working out ways around it.
Well, this is the problem, right? The tech company mantra for so long has been move fast and break things, and it's basically Uber, any number of them, they kind of skirt the local laws. They just do all they can to get their technology out there, and then they get market saturation, and then they're too big to fail or to prosecute or to regulate in any meaningful way. And so this is tough. I will say this time around, last time the social media companies basically just convinced the media to go up to their door and hand over all their stuff. Now this time there's a bit more of a proactive approach being taken because people are leery of trusting any kind of tech company ever again. So yes, it's not looking easy and there's going to be obstacles, but at least after that earlier misstep, they're not just going to go and hand over all their goods. The problem is, as I said, the power imbalance is just so vast this time. Last time it might have been sort of an equal footing, maybe legacy media and this new upcoming media. And now the legacy media has a fraction of the power of the big tech companies, so it's an uphill battle.
Now, before we go this week, on Midweek Media Watch this week, I looked at some of the responses to RNZ's new audio strategy to reverse the loss of listeners to RNZ National, including some of the feedback we've had from you, our Media Watch listeners. Thanks for that. Do keep it coming. And next week, I will be sitting down with RNZ's Chief Executive Paul Thompson to talk about that, but also other big issues about RNZ and its future direction. So if you have questions, things you want me to raise, do get in touch. We'll tell you how in a minute. That's next week, so tune in for that, or you can stream it, download it later as a podcast. Your call, though. Hayden, RNZ would really like people to tune in and listen to it on RNZ National.
We need you. We need you.
Yeah, that's right. Do both. Listen live, then listen again later on demand. Help a brother out. That's next week on Media Watch. That's it for now for this weekend. Thank you very much for listening. If you have any thoughts for us or ideas for us to follow up or for that interview with Paul Thompson next week, do get in touch. Email us, mediawatch@rnz.co.nz. You'll also find us at Mediawatch NZ on X, and you can even write us a letter if you're quick and send it to Mediawatch, PO Box 123 Wellington. And Hayden will be back next Wednesday with his final Midweek Media Watch. That's 8:30 with Emil Donovan. Are you having trouble holding it in there?
Sorry. Yeah.
Do you wonder what state Emil's going to be in?
He won't be able to go to air.
That will be interesting. So don't miss that. In the meantime, follow Media Watch and listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any podcast app to make sure you never miss an episode.